The night sky above the forgotten planet was heavy and silent. Stars shone far away like cold eyes watching from the dark. The air was thin, filled with a strange metallic taste. No birds, no voices, no wind. Only silence. A lone human traveler stepped out of his small ship. His boots pressed into the gray soil, making soft crunching sounds. He pulled his jacket tighter around him, though the air was not cold. It was heavy with sadness, as if the ground itself carried memories of sorrow. His name was Daniel. He was an explorer, always moving from one world to another. He told himself he was searching for knowledge, for new places, for secrets of the universe. But deep inside he knew he was running. From what, he never said. Perhaps from his own loneliness. The planet looked empty, but Daniel felt something strange. It was the feeling of being watched. His eyes searched the rocky landscape, the broken ruins, the old marks of battles long past. Nothing moved, yet his heart beat faster. He switched on his scanner, but it showed no life around. Still, the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, almost alive. Daniel whispered to himself, "This place, it feels like a graveyard." Then it happened. A voice. Soft. Broken. Not from his radio, not from his scanner, from the air itself, human. Daniel froze. The voice was not loud, but it was clear. It was not the wind. It was not an echo. It was a whisper calling directly to him. He turned, searching the shadows between the ruined walls. Nothing, only cracked stone and dust. He took one slow step, then another. His hand moved toward his sidearm, though he did not pull it out. Again the voice came. This time closer, human. Come. Daniel's heart pounded. No one should be here. His ship's system showed the planet was empty. No cities, no villages, no life signs. And yet someone or something was calling him. He forced his voice to stay calm. "Who's there?" he called. "Show yourself." The silence returned for a moment, stretching long until he began to think he imagined it. Then from the corner of his eye he saw movement. A shadow, tall and thin, slipping behind a broken pillar. Daniel followed. His boots echoed against the stone floor as he stepped into what looked like the remains of a great hall. The ceiling was broken, open to the sky, but pieces of old art were still painted on the walls. Strange figures, families, children, now covered with cracks and dust. At the far end of the hall he saw her, a figure cloaked in pale light, standing still among the ruins. Daniel's breath caught. It was not human. The shape was close to human, but taller, more delicate, with glowing marks running across her skin like rivers of silver. Her face was hidden in the shadows, but he could see her eyes, large, shining, and filled with something he had not seen in years. Sorrow. The figure raised her head slowly. Her voice was soft, almost breaking apart. "Human," she whispered. "You came." Daniel stepped back, his hand still near his weapon. "What are you?" he asked carefully. She took one slow step forward, her body moving with grace but also weakness, as if her strength was fading. She paused, her voice trembling. "I am the last," Daniel frowned. "The last of what?" Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light. He felt no threat in them, only grief deep as the endless sky. "The last of my kind," she said. The words hit Daniel like a weight. He had heard stories of worlds destroyed by wars, by hunger, by greed. But standing here, face to face with someone who truly carried the pain of extinction, it was different. Still, he stayed cautious. "Why call me? Why me?" The figure's head lowered. For a long moment she said nothing. Then her voice broke like glass. "Because I have no one. And my children, they have no one. Human, please. Help!" Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had not seen the children she spoke of, but her voice was filled with desperation, with a loneliness that pierced even his guarded heart. But his mind shouted with questions. Children here? How could they survive? Why call a stranger a human? Is this a trap? The silence returned, but now it was heavier. Daniel stood still, caught between fear and curiosity, between mistrust and something deeper, something pulling him toward her. The ruins around him seemed to close in. The planet itself seemed to whisper sorrow into his ears. And yet in that darkness, in that silence, there was one fragile voice asking for help. Daniel swallowed hard. He took one cautious step forward. "Show me," he said quietly. The figure nodded, slowly, like a grieving queen who had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Her hand lifted, pointing toward a path deeper into the ruins. And with that, the silence broke again. Not with words this time, but with the faint sound of movement. Small footsteps. The sound of little lives waiting in the shadows. Daniel's eyes widened. The story was only beginning. The ruins were quiet as Daniel followed the mysterious figure. Each step echoed softly like footsteps in a tomb. The air grew heavier, filled with a faint humming sound as if the stones themselves remembered voices long gone. She walked ahead of him, her movements graceful yet slow, as though each step cost her strength. The faint glow from her skin guided the path through the broken walls and fallen towers. Daniel kept his distance, his mind racing. He had seen many strange things across the galaxy, but never something like this, a lone being, full of sorrow yet calling him by name. Finally, she stopped before what looked like the remains of a great doorway. Half of it had collapsed, blocking the way. She turned to him, her large eyes shimmering like wet glass. "Human," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Do you fear me?" Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't fear you," he answered, though deep inside a part of him did. She lowered her head almost as if relieved. Then she lifted her hand and touched the cracked wall. The stones shifted with a groan and a narrow path opened. "Come," she whispered. He followed her into a chamber. The air here was warmer, filled with a strange sweetness, almost like flowers long dead but not forgotten. In the center, a soft glow lit the room. Daniel blinked, his heart tightening. There, 3 small figures. Children. They were unlike her, smaller, weaker, their glowing patterns faint. Their eyes were wide, innocent but tired. They looked at Daniel with fear at first, then with hope. Daniel felt his breath catch. They were alive. They were real. The woman stepped forward, kneeling beside them. Her hand moved gently over their heads. Her voice shook as she spoke. "These are my children. They are all that remains of my people." Daniel looked at them again. The smallest one clung to her mother's arm, while the others sat quietly, watching him as though he was a figure from another world, which in truth he was. The woman lifted her eyes toward him. Her voice grew heavier, full of pain. "My mate, my companion, he is gone. He fell when the war came." Her words echoed in the chamber. Daniel felt a chill. He knew the signs of war. The ruins outside, the silence, the broken sky, it all fit together, she went on, her voice trembling but firm. "The war was between your kind and mine. Long ago, fire fell from the skies. Armies came. My people fought. We lost." Daniel's mouth went dry. He had read of such battles in history archives, but hearing it from the lips of a survivor was different. She looked at her children, then back at him. "I buried him with my hands. I buried many. Now, I am all that is left to guard them. But my strength fades. Soon I will follow him, and they will be alone." Her voice broke. For a moment she could not speak. Daniel stood in silence, his heart heavy. He had not come here to take sides in an old war. He was only a traveler, but now the ruins were no longer empty stones. They were filled with grief, with memories of lives torn apart. The widow drew a sharp breath. Her eyes locked on him, shining with desperation. "Human," she whispered, her voice trembling like a dying flame. "Adopt them, take them. Raise them as your own. Give them a future." The word struck Daniel like thunder. "Adopt them?" he repeated, stunned. She nodded, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. "Yes, you came here not by chance. You came because I called. I searched the stars. I sent my voice through the void, and you answered." Daniel felt a shiver, so it had not been an accident. Her voice had reached him, pulled him here. He stared at the children again. Their eyes were wide, silent, but full of silent pleading. He felt their innocence pressing against his guarded heart, but his mind rebelled. "I am no father. I travel, I survive. I live alone. How can I raise them?" He shook his head. "Why me? There must be others. Others of your kind somewhere." She closed her eyes. "No, I searched. There are none. Only I remain, and soon. Not even I." Her voice fell to a whisper. "If you leave them, they will die. Their light will fade. Their voices will vanish into the dust. Human, end my loneliness by ending theirs." The words carried a weight beyond sound. They were heavy with love, with grief, with hope. Daniel's chest ached. He had lived his life escaping bonds, escaping ties. Now before him were 3 fragile lives tied to his choice. The widow's hands trembled as she reached toward him. Please, do not let my children die as my people did. Do not let them grow with no one to guide them. You are human. You know love. Show it to them. Silence filled the chamber again. The children's small eyes did not blink. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He wanted to turn away, to run back to his ship, to escape the weight of her plea. But something in her eyes held him. It was not just sorrow, it was trust. Trust placed on a stranger. Trust born from desperation, but also from faith. Daniel clenched his fists. His world was shifting. His life was no longer just his own. The widow lowered her head. I ask you not as enemy, not as alien, not as stranger. I ask you as mother. The chamber grew still. Even the air seemed to wait for his answer. And in that silence, Daniel felt the heaviest choice of his life begin to rise before him. The chamber felt warmer now, but not with comfort. It was heavy, filled with quiet breaths and wide eyes. Daniel stood at the edge, staring at the 3 small figures. The alien widow gently pushed her children forward. They were thin, their glowing lines dim compared to hers, yet they were alive, fragile flames trying not to fade. The oldest, a boy, seemed cautious. His eyes studied Daniel as if measuring him, deciding whether this stranger could be trusted. The middle one, a girl, hid behind her brother, her small hands gripping the folds of his arm. The youngest, barely more than a toddler, clung tightly to the widow's leg, his glowing eyes half filled with fear, half filled with curiosity. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen children before, but never like this, so alien yet so familiar in their innocence. The widow's voice broke the silence. These are my heart, my breath, my hope. But they are weak. They cannot survive alone. Daniel crouched slowly, bringing himself closer to their level. He did not speak at first. He only watched them, and they in return watched him. The boy tilted his head. Human? His voice was soft, the word strange on his tongue. Daniel blinked. They could speak his language. Not clearly, not perfectly, but enough. Yes, Daniel answered. I am human. The boy stepped forward only 1 pace. His small glowing eyes searched Daniel's face. Mother says, you will take us. The word struck Daniel like a blade. He looked up sharply at the widow, but she did not speak. She only lowered her head as though ashamed or perhaps afraid of his refusal. Daniel looked back at the boy. He stopped. The word yes was too heavy. The word no felt cruel. His throat refused both. The girl peeked from behind her brother, her voice almost a whisper. Will you leave us? Daniel felt a weight settle on his chest. The question was simple, but it carried the power of a storm. He wanted to answer, but his tongue was heavy, chained by doubt. The widow placed a gentle hand on her daughter's head. Do not fear, child, he came. He will not leave. Daniel clenched his fists. She believes that, but do I? The youngest child let go of his mother's leg and took a shaky step toward Daniel. His little feet made no sound on the stone. He stumbled, then caught himself. His eyes, so large, so trusting, looked up into Daniel's. Without thinking, Daniel extended a hand. The child reached for it. Their skin touched, warm, strange, but real. A spark of connection flowed between them, soft but undeniable. Daniel's heart thudded. He pulled his hand back quickly, almost afraid of what he felt. But the child smiled faintly, a small, fragile smile in a world of sorrow. The widow's voice trembled. They need more than food, more than shelter. They need someone who will carry them when I am gone, someone who will fight for them. Daniel rose to his feet. His voice was firm, but it shook at the edges. I am no father. I travel. I fight, yes, but I fight for myself. I have nothing to give them. The widow's eyes glowed with quiet strength. You have more than you believe. You have what they need most. You have heart. Daniel turned away, pacing. His boots scraped against the stone floor. He wanted to argue, to shout that she was wrong, that he was the last man who should raise anyone. But his words died before they left his mouth. Behind him, the boy's voice rose again. Human. Daniel turned. The boy stood straighter now, his small shoulders squared. His voice was not strong, but it carried a quiet resolve. If you go, we will follow, even if we fall. The words silenced the chamber. Even the widow's breath seemed caught. Daniel stared at the boy, stunned. Such courage from someone so small, so fragile. A child ready to walk into the void rather than be left behind. The widow's hand trembled as she touched her son's shoulder. They will not survive here. The beast will come when night falls. The machines of war still roam. I cannot protect them much longer, but you can. Daniel looked at the children again. Their eyes were no longer only pleading, they were expectant, waiting for his decision. His mind screamed no. His heart whispered yes. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he remembered his own childhood. The sound of laughter long gone. The warmth of family he had lost to time. The memory burned. The loneliness he carried all this time was the same loneliness waiting for these children if he walked away. When he opened his eyes, the widow was still watching him. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. You can turn away, human, no one will stop you. But if you leave, their voices will vanish and my soul will never find peace. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at the boy, the girl, and the youngest. 3 tiny lives balancing on the edge of hope and despair. He did not speak his decision yet. But as the smallest child reached for his hand again, Daniel did not pull away. The widow's eyes filled with silent tears. She saw what Daniel had not yet admitted to himself. The bond had already begun, and deep in the shadows of the ruins, unseen eyes watched. Not all was silent on this planet. Danger was moving closer. The true test of Daniel's choice was about to begin. The ruins whispered with silence as Daniel sat among the alien children. Their eyes never left him, as if they feared he might vanish if they blinked. The widow stood near the broken wall, her glowing patterns flickering weakly in the dim light. Night was creeping across the sky outside. Shadows stretched long and the air grew colder. Daniel felt unease crawl along his skin. Something about this place carried not just sorrow but danger. Finally, he broke the silence. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low. "Why call a human to your side?" "You knew I would question. You knew I would fear. And still, you chose me." The widow turned, her large eyes catching the faint glow from the stones. For a long moment, she did not answer. Then her voice rose, soft but sharp, carrying the weight of memories. "Because you must know the truth," she said. Daniel frowned. "What truth?" She stepped closer, her movements slow, her body trembling from weakness. Her voice shook but carried strength born of pain. "The truth of this world. The truth of why I am alone. The truth of what humans did here." Her words struck him like a blade. Daniel straightened, his breath caught in his chest. The widow lowered herself to the ground, kneeling before her children. Her glowing hand rested gently on her son's shoulder as she spoke. "Long ago, before your time, my people lived in peace. We were few, but we were strong in spirit. We loved, we sang, we built. We raised our children beneath the stars without fear." Her eyes darkened with memory. Then came the war. Daniel's chest tightened. He had heard of wars between species, but this, it felt closer, heavier, as if the air itself remembered. "They came from the sky," she whispered. "Your kind humans, ships of fire and steel. Soldiers with weapons that burned the earth. My people fought back, but we were not ready for such power." The children listened in silence, their small faces shadowed by grief they were too young to fully understand. The widow's voice grew heavier. "Our cities fell. Our waters turned black. Our skies filled with ash. Many died, many more vanished. And in the end, my mate, the father of my children, fell among the broken stones. I buried him with my hands." Her eyes glistened as tears rolled down her pale cheeks. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He wanted to argue, to say it was not him, not his fault. But he knew the truth of history. Humans had spread far and wide, often leaving destruction in their wake. Still, he found his voice. "Not all humans are like that. I have never taken part in such wars." She looked at him with eyes that cut through excuses. "And yet you carry their blood. Their choices run through you. The ghosts of my people see you and they see their killers." Daniel's mouth went dry. The weight of her words pressed against him. He felt guilt he had never expected to carry. But then her voice softened. "And still, I called you." Daniel blinked. "Why? Why would you call the child of those who destroyed your people?" The widow looked at her children, then back at him. Her voice trembled, yet hope flickered within it. "Because mercy is stronger than hate. Because love is stronger than war. Because I saw in the heart of one human long ago something worth trusting. Not all of you are destroyers. Some of you can protect." Daniel's chest ached. He remembered the child's small hand in his own, the fragile warmth of life trusting him without question. The widow leaned closer, her voice a whisper now. There is more. You must know what hunts us still. Daniel narrowed his eyes.
What do you mean?
She looked toward the broken doorway, her voice tense. The machines, they were left behind by your kind. Weapons of war, unstoppable, tireless. They walk the ruins, killing all they find. At night, they awaken, and when they smell life, they come. Daniel's pulse quickened. He remembered the faint sounds he had heard earlier, the shifting in the shadows. Not ghosts, not beasts, machines, human-made. The widow's voice shook as she went on. I have hidden the children as long as I could, but my strength fades. When the machines find us, I cannot fight them. That is why I called. That is why you must take them. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had faced machines before, cold, merciless, created for only one purpose. But this time the weight was different. These children were not strangers anymore. The boy looked up at him, his small voice cutting the silence. Will you fight them for us? Daniel's heart pounded. The choice pressed harder now, heavier with each breath. He could run, leave this planet, and never look back. Or he could stay, and face not only machines but his own past, his own loneliness, his own fear of being more than just a wanderer. The widow placed her trembling hand on his arm. Her eyes were wet, her voice breaking. Do this and my soul will rest. Refuse and they will join the bones of my people. The chamber fell into silence. The children's eyes burned with hope. The widow's eyes burned with grief. And Daniel's heart burned with a decision that could not be undone. Far outside in the ruins, something heavy moved. The faint sound of metal against stone echoed through the night. The machines had awakened. The sound came first, a deep, grinding noise like metal claws dragging across stone. It echoed through the ruins, steady and cold. Daniel froze, his hand tightening near his weapon. The children looked around with wide, fearful eyes. Even the widow's trembling glow dimmed as if shadows stole her strength. They are here, she whispered. Daniel's heart thudded. He remembered her words, machines left behind by humans, unstoppable, merciless, and now they were awake. The youngest child whimpered softly, clutching his sister's hand. The widow knelt beside them, her voice calm but urgent. Stay close. Do not move unless I say. Daniel stepped toward the broken doorway, peering into the dark outside. The moonlight touched pieces of ruined stone, but beyond that was only shadow. Then movement, a shape taller than a man, its metal body glinting faintly. Its eyes glowed red, cutting through the night. Daniel whispered through his teeth. It's a hunter drone. The widow's voice trembled. It will not stop until blood is spilled. Daniel pulled out his blaster, the weapon humming to life in his grip. He glanced back at the children. Their faces were pale, waiting, trusting. His chest tightened. He was not only fighting for himself now. The machine stepped fully into view. Its frame was scarred with old battles, but its movements were sharp, precise. Each step cracked the stone beneath its weight. The red eyes locked on the chamber entrance. It had found them. Daniel raised his weapon. Stay behind me. The drone's chest split open, revealing a glowing barrel. Energy built inside, pulsing with deadly light. Daniel shouted, Down! A blast ripped through the air, striking the wall behind him. Stone shattered, dust flying. The children screamed, ducking into their mother's arms. Daniel rolled to the side, firing back. His shot struck the drone's shoulder, sparks exploding, but the machine did not slow. It turned, aiming again. The widow cried out, It will call more if you do not end it. Daniel cursed under his breath. His blaster hummed as he fired again, aiming for the glowing core in its chest. The drone staggered, its steps heavy, but it still moved forward. Closer. Closer. The boy shouted, his voice sharp with fear. Human, behind you! Daniel spun just as another smaller machine crawled across the broken wall, its metal limbs clinking like knives. He shot quickly, the blast tearing through its head. The machine fell, twitching before going still. But the first drone kept coming. Its red eyes flared brighter. Daniel's pulse hammered. His weapon was heating, nearly overloading. He could not keep firing blindly. He had to choose his shots carefully. The widow's voice rose, trembling but strong. Strike the core. Only the heart will kill it. Daniel gritted his teeth, waiting as the drone lifted its arm again. The glowing barrel charged, aiming straight for the children. No! Daniel roared. He leapt forward, firing 3 quick shots. The first missed, the second scraped its armor, but the third... The third pierced the core. The drone froze. Its red eyes flickered, dimmed, then went black. A final spark burst from its chest before it collapsed, crashing to the ground with a thunderous clang. Silence fell. Only Daniel's heavy breaths filled the chamber. Dust floated in the air, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The children peeked out from their mother's arms, their eyes wide, trembling. The youngest crawled toward Daniel, reaching out with tiny glowing fingers. Daniel lowered his weapon, his chest heaving. He knelt as the child touched his hand again. Warmth spread through him, fragile but powerful. The widow rose slowly, her eyes shining. "You fought for them." Daniel shook his head, his voice rough. "I fought because I had no choice." Her gaze did not waver. "No, human, you chose. You could have run. But you stayed. You protected." Her words pressed deep into his heart. He wanted to deny them, to push the weight away. But the truth stood before him, in the eyes of the children who now looked at him not with fear but with hope. The boy stepped forward, standing tall despite his shaking knees. His voice was quiet, but it carried strength. "You are one of us now." Daniel felt something shift inside him. A bond, fragile yet unbreakable, had been forged in the fire of battle. But outside, the night was not silent. Far in the ruins, more grinding sounds echoed. Heavy steps, more machines. Daniel rose, his grip tightening on his weapon. His voice was steady now, carrying a weight he had never felt before. "Then we have to move. If more are coming, we can't stay here." The widow nodded weakly. "There is a path, a hidden way out, but it will test us. You must lead." Daniel looked at the children, their eyes locked on him, waiting for his word. He swallowed hard, then nodded. "Stay close. Don't look back. Whatever happens, I'll keep you safe." The widow's lips trembled as she whispered, "Then perhaps I was right to trust you." The grinding sounds grew louder, closer, like thunder marching through the ruins. Daniel's heart pounded, but he no longer stood for himself alone. For the first time in his life, he carried something greater than his own survival. The true test of trust had only begun. The ruins shook with distant echoes of metal. The machines were still hunting. Daniel led the widow and her children through a narrow passage, the broken walls closing in like ribs of a dying beast. Dust fell with every step, and the air was thick with tension. At last they entered a cavern hidden beneath the ruins. Faint blue crystals lit the chamber, glowing like quiet stars. The children huddled close, their small hands gripping their mother's robe. Daniel leaned against a rock, breathing hard. His blaster was hot in his grip, and sweat dripped down his face. He scanned the cavern carefully. For now, it was safe. The widow stood still, her glowing skin pale, her shoulders trembling. Daniel noticed how weak she had become. Every step seemed to drain her, as though the planet itself was feeding on her strength. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, heavy with sorrow. "Here, we are hidden for a little while, but this place is not our home." "It is my grave," Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She lifted her eyes to him. They were filled with a sadness so deep that even the children felt it, falling silent. "I cannot leave this world," she whispered. "My life is bound to its heart. When the war destroyed my people, our bond to the planet was shattered. I remained only because I tied myself to what is left. If I step beyond its sky, I will die." Daniel's stomach tightened. He had faced death before, but this was heavier. "So you knew? You knew you could never come with us." The widow closed her eyes, tears glistening. "Yes, that is why I called you. Not for me. For them." The children turned to her, confused. The boy's small voice broke the silence. "Mother, you will not come." Her hand trembled as she touched his face. "My heart, I cannot. My place is here where your father fell. But you must go. You must live." The girl shook her head violently, clinging to her mother's arm. "No, we stay with you." The youngest cried softly, burying his face in her robe. Daniel stepped back, his chest heavy. He had expected to fight machines, to escape danger. But this choice, this cruel truth, was worse than any battle. The widow looked at him, her voice breaking. "Take them, human. Carry them beyond the stars. Give them a future I cannot. This is the only way." Daniel's fists clenched. His voice was rough. "You're asking me to tear them from you. To take them when they don't want to leave." Her eyes burned with grief. "Better their tears today than their death tomorrow. Better their hearts break now than their lives end in silence." The boy stepped forward, shaking. His small hands balled into fists. You can fight. You can stay. Together we can. The widow silenced him with a touch. Her lips trembled, but her voice was firm. No, child. My fight is over. Yours has not yet begun. Daniel turned away, pacing. His thoughts raged. He had lived his life avoiding attachments, avoiding chains. And now, he was being asked to carry 3 fragile lives across the stars, while leaving their mother to die alone. He felt the weight pressing down, heavier than any battlefield. The widow's voice came again, softer like a final plea. You feared chains, but love is not a chain, human, it is a bridge. Cross it, take them across. Let me rest. Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at the children again, their eyes full of tears, their small hands gripping one another. And in that moment he knew they would not survive here. They needed him. Not as a stranger, not as a soldier, but as a father. Still, his voice cracked when he spoke. If I take them, you will die alone. The widow smiled faintly, though her tears fell freely. I am already alone. My heart ended when he fell. But their hearts can still begin. Her body shook, her glow flickering weaker. She knelt, holding all 3 children close, pressing her face into their hair. My little stars. Remember me not with sorrow, but with love. Follow him. Trust him. He will carry you. The boy wept silently, but he nodded, his small shoulders shaking. The girl clung to her mother one last time, whispering words Daniel could not understand. The youngest only cried, too small to grasp what was being taken. Daniel's chest burned as he watched. He had fought machines, storms, and death, but this moment was harder than all of them. The widow looked up at him one final time. Promise me, human. Promise you will not leave them. Daniel's voice was low, steady, though his heart broke with each word. I promise. Her eyes softened, relief washing over her face. She pressed a kiss to each child's head, then slowly pushed them toward him. Her trembling hands lingered, then fell away. The children stood before Daniel now, their small forms fragile against the dark. They looked at him not with trust alone, but with fear of loss, with hope mixed with grief. Daniel knelt, placing his hands gently on their shoulders. I'll protect you always. The widow's glow dimmed further. Her voice was only a whisper now. Then my soul can rest. Silence filled the cavern. Outside, the machines moved closer, their grinding echo growing louder. But inside, time slowed. The choice had been made. Daniel had become more than an explorer. He had become a father. And as the widow lowered her head, her final tears falling to the stone, she knew her loneliness was ending, not by her own survival, but by the survival of her children. The cavern was quiet after her words. The widow knelt on the stone floor, her glow fading with each breath. Her children clung to her, their small voices breaking the silence with soft cries. Daniel stood nearby, his weapon still warm in his grip, listening to the heavy echoes of the machines outside. They were coming closer. Time was short. The widow lifted her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked at Daniel, her face calm now, though sorrow lingered in every line. You must go, she whispered. Take them to your ship. Leave before the machines find you. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to say there must be another way. But he saw the truth in her trembling hands, in her fading light. She had no strength left. The planet was draining her life. The boy shook his head fiercely, his voice breaking. No, we stay with you. The widow pulled him close, kissing his forehead. My brave one, you must live. Carry my love with you. That is how I will stay. The girl wept, clutching her mother's arm. I don't want to leave you. Her mother's voice shook. I will always be with you in your hearts in the stars. But you must follow him now. He is your path. The youngest, too small to understand, pressed his face into her chest, sobbing softly. The widow closed her eyes, holding him as tightly as her fading strength allowed. Daniel swallowed hard. His voice was low, heavy. They won't go without you. You have to help me make them believe. The widow nodded slowly. She lifted her head, meeting her children's eyes one last time. Listen to me, little ones. This is not an end. It is a beginning. I give you to him not as a stranger but as family. He will carry you where I cannot. Her glow flickered again, weaker, dimmer. She turned to Daniel, her voice soft but steady. Take them now. Do not look back. The boy stepped forward, his small hands clenched. His eyes wet with tears locked on Daniel. Will you keep us safe? Daniel knelt, his voice rough but firm. With my life, I promise. The boy hesitated, then nodded, though tears ran down his cheeks. He took his sister's hand, pulling her gently. The youngest still clung to his mother, but Daniel reached down and lifted him into his arms. The child cried but rested his head against Daniel's chest, too tired to resist. The widow touched each of their faces one last time. "My stars, shine for me, live for me, love for me." Then she looked at Daniel. Her voice was barely a whisper. "End my loneliness, human, keep them safe. Let my heart live through them." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but words failed. Instead, he only nodded. The sounds outside grew louder. The machines were close now, their grinding steps shaking the stone beneath them. Daniel turned, guiding the children toward the hidden exit. The widow stayed where she was, kneeling, her glow dim like a candle in the wind. At the entrance of the cavern, Daniel paused. Against his will, he looked back. The widow raised her head, meeting his eyes one final time. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Go." And then she lowered her head, closing her eyes. Daniel turned away, forcing himself forward. Each step felt heavy, but the children pressed close, their small hands gripping his arms. Together they climbed through the narrow passage and emerged into the open night. Above them, the stars shone bright, endless, silent. Daniel guided them across the ruins, past broken walls and shattered towers, his heart pounding with every sound of pursuit. At last, his ship came into view, resting on the gray soil like a silver guardian. The children gasped softly, their tears slowing as hope lit their eyes. Daniel opened the hatch and guided them inside. The boy helped his sister, and Daniel set the youngest gently in a seat. Their faces glowed faintly in the ship's light, fragile but alive. As the engines roared to life, the ground trembled. Through the window, Daniel saw shadows moving in the distance, the machines arriving at the cavern. He imagined them finding her, their red eyes scanning her still form. But she would not run. She had chosen her ending. The ship lifted, dust rising in a cloud beneath it. The children pressed against the window, watching the ruins grow smaller. The girl whispered softly, "Goodbye, Mother." Daniel's hands tightened on the controls. His chest burned, his throat raw, but he kept his eyes forward. He could not fail them now. The ship broke through the clouds into the cold silence of space. The planet below shone like a dying ember, fading in the endless dark. Daniel leaned back, his breath heavy. The children were quiet now, exhausted, their faces streaked with tears. The boy sat close to his siblings, holding them as if he had suddenly grown older. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low but steady. "She gave you to me, and I swear, I'll never let you go." The boy looked at him, his eyes wet but strong. Slowly he nodded. The girl reached for Daniel's hand. The youngest, half asleep, curled against his chest. And in that fragile circle of grief and hope, a new bond was born. Behind them, the widow remained, her body fading, her glow sinking into the stone. But her spirit, her love, rose with them, carried in the hearts of her children, carried in the promise of the human who had chosen not to turn away. The stars stretched before them. The journey was only beginning, but for the first time in years, Daniel did not feel alone.